Source Material Comics podcast. Heading on down the Marvel road, that's Mark Radulich. Mark Radulich, Avengers, Defenders, Tarot. I'll just go ahead and spoil it. I've never heard of this book. Didn't even know it existed.
Neither did I. It's what issues 1 through 4, Tarot by Alan Davis.
Alan Davis. Now that's the name I recognize. So you're at the store.
Mm-hmm.
You're just picking up stuff that looks good. I mean, the cover of this is pretty awesome. So
yeah, I know a lot of assholes, but I also know a lot of people who are into like paganism and witchery and astrology and all kinds of like weirdo shit, right?
Yeah.
Off the beaten path shit. Not like me and you shit, like weirdo shit. Okay. It's like tarot readings, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And I'd never heard of this before. Like, I don't even know what year this was.
2020.
So when I saw it, I was like, Avengers, Defenders, Tarot. Huh. Like, again, looking for self-contained stories. And I was like, oh, interesting. They're playing with the whole idea of tarot cards. It's an Avengers, Defenders crossover. Interesting. I want to give this a shot. And I was flipping through the book, and I was like, oh, the artwork has that typical comic book art. It's not particularly distinguishable, but this isn't
Silver Surfer Black.
No, this is your standard, regular, readable comic book art. But in that art, with very acute lines, very particular lines, very readable lines, is interesting artwork. Like there's some art here in some of these pages where they're playing with, like I said, the aesthetic of a tarot card deck. But the other thing about this book, it's one of those like almost like an episode of television where it's utterly self-contained. It has nothing to do with the greater narrative of the season. And there's no stakes, but also nothing is off the table. Anything can happen. Anything can happen in this episode because it's going to be completely fixed by the end of it.
Oh yeah.
But in that 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour time span, you were just seeing everything. Avengers, Defenders, Tarot is what I wanted Multiverse of Madness to be.
Oh, that would have been great.
It is like zany multiverse, wacko Roger Rabbit shit going on in this.
Oh yeah.
book.
Yeah.
It is really cool. I have 4 issues to play like a kid in the candy store. I can do anything I want. I can kill any character. I can make any character into what I want it to be. I, as an artist, as a comic book writer, as a comic book artist, can do anything. I can utterly, and I love that. When people ask me, like, what do you like in another person? I am attracted to other people's passions. Like, if you are passionate about something, Jesse, like you are passionate about comic books. Like, you do an entire podcast, and I'm trying to get you to stay on topic, and you're like, I'm reading comics. You
never done that before. I'm a consummate professional.
You started your own comic book podcast because comic books were meaningful to you. As much as Chris Bailey and I disagree on things, he is passionate about comics. Pat Mullen is passionate about to violently so. Yeah. Passionate about comics. And I like that about people. I like it when you're so into something, you become almost like Asperger's-y or like autistic about it, where like you know every detail and you are excited to share those details because life is about sharing your love. And I don't mean that snarkily, like, because I know people know about me, but I don't not that kind of love. If you love something, you want other people to share in that love too, or at least share your love of the thing. And I think you can see into a person's soul when you see what they love. When it comes to the aesthetic, when it comes to the story in this, you could tell like the people playing in this world, like, we love comics. And for 4 issues, we can do anything we want to do. We're not married to the strict story structure of whatever's happening at editorial Marvel. We can do anything. And I love that. I love that I could get lost in this 4-issue. I have it as a trade, but this trade of Avengers, Defenders, Tarot. I could just get lost in that story. And when it was over, I can move on. But for that little bit, for those 4 issues, I was in this magical place where nothing mattered and everything was awesome. That's not to say it's like the world's greatest story, but I do love the fact that you could tell there was passion in the story writing, in the creation of this book.
Absolutely. This is very much an Alan Davis book. Alan Davis, if you read any of Excalibur from back in the late 80s and early 90s, you know Alan Davis. He was also involved in the X books in the late 90s and early 2000s. So,
oh my God, no wonder this was so good. I loved Excalibur.
Right, dude?
That was such a zany book.
Yes, and that's exactly what you've got here. I mean, you get some zaniness that's happening on like this cosmic. There's a very cosmic level threat that involved these 2 teams.
I
But yeah,
love
it
the
gets
premise. It's like I have magic ooze that I use to make tarot cards.
right.
What?
Yep.
Did you
Yeah.
throw a dartboard at ideas and it was like ooze, tarot cards,
Yes.
whatever, and like that's the story?
For a brief moment, when Chris Sheehan had his Excalibur podcast that he was doing, Claremont to Claremont, that's what it was. I hop in there. I've never read Excalibur before. So I think I read like maybe 5 or 6 issues that I did for that podcast. So I never, I knew about the characters. I just never read Excalibur. I was heavy into the X books back in the 80s and 90s. I was reading X Factor, X-Men, but I was not going over into Excalibur at all. So that was the first time I started reading Alan Davis. So yeah, you've read them, so the caliber of writing that you're getting into. That's what you kind of get here. This is definitely an Alan Davis story. Now there are 2 teams, that are featured on this: the Avengers and the Defenders. So most everybody knows who the Avengers are. The Defenders are not your Netflix Defenders, folks. We're just going to go ahead and say I don't think there's a single one of the Defenders in this book that were on that show.
Nope.
So just remember that. But let me go ahead and give props to the creative team here. Again, writing by Alan Davis, art by Paul Renaud, and then colors by Paul Mounts, lettered by VC's Clayton Coles, again, coming back at us. So, yeah, let me talk about our teams here. Our teams are the Defenders. Now, did you ever read any Defenders comics at all?
Yeah, I did. Not a lot, but because I was a Hulk fan and Hulk was on the Defenders, I was at least somewhat familiar with the Defenders.
Okay.
And I read more modern solo Doctor Strange stuff. I actually have a trade where it focuses more on him being a surgeon than it does anything else, which I thought was a fun book. Yeah, I've already read it, so I didn't want to pitch it to you for us to cover. What Doctor Strange I've read that wasn't like some modern self-contained stuff, I read Doctor Strange in the Defenders.
Okay.
Since he was the team leader. Yeah.
Yeah, so our team here, our current roster of Defenders are Namor, the Submariner, Doctor Strange, Silver Surfer, Valkyrie, and the Hulk. So that's a pretty powerful team when you take a look at that.
Valkyrie is like a new addition. Everybody else I've seen before.
Yeah.
Surfer, Strange, Namor, and the Hulk, who was also an Avenger.
Yes, that's right. So yeah, speaking of the Avengers, their team consists of Scarlet Witch, Captain America, Vision, Thor, and Iron Man. And I think we know, anybody out there could tell you the cinematic history of these and a lot about the Marvel comic book history of that team. The Defenders are more, not a whole lot of people are aware of that team. Actually, I think they're referred to as the non-team. But yeah. So
the non-team.
I think that was kind of like the vision when they put the Defenders together. I'd have to look this up to make sure, but that was like one of the things that they had said is like, I'm going to put together a team of superheroes they're considered a non-team of superheroes, and that's what they went for. So, but anyway, so we have these 2 teams, and let's go ahead. I'll get into the synopsis here, and we'll talk about some of our favorite parts of this book. The Defenders, Namor, Doctor Strange, Silver Surfer, Valkyrie, and the Hulk go on a mission to stop the evil Cyrus Black from using the infernal ichor of Ishizok, a mystical fluid that allows its owner to control others. Actually, to control things, I should just say, because it's used not just to control people, but it's used to also control like statues and stuff in this book. But soon, Namor begins to recall a memory during the time he fought alongside Captain America in World War II, when Captain America turned into the Hulk. Knowing that this memory could have never happened, he also recalls elements of that memory similar to what he just saw with the infernal ichor of Ishizok. Stopping Cyrus, the team finds out that more of the ichor is at Avengers Mansion. They soon run into the evil alchemist Diablo, who uses the ichor to take control of most of the Avengers by drawing their likeness onto blank cards. When the Avengers and Defenders finally are able to wrest control of the ichor back, Diablo opens up a portal, a big thing, like some elder god's about to come through, very similar to what was that? I think was that Multiverse of Madness? I think where he was trying to. Anyway, or I might be thinking of What If, but anyway, he falls into the portal and he goes into the great beyond. Next thing he knows, he wakes up in space. And things get crazy. But now his friends back home, they look to investigate the ichor as strange things begin to occur. Recent events seem to have never happened, yet the teams recall the actual events that did occur. So it's like there's these false memories that are happening. Wait a second. I think they're standing there after they had this big fight and all the battle damage is gone. Some people are wearing like different costumes. some craziness is happening. They also aim to find Doctor Strange. He obviously fell through the portal. They need to get him back. And Iron Man uses a device to open up the rift that Doctor Strange fell into. But as soon as he does that, reality begins to fracture. The teams are able to find Diablo, who swears he's not behind what is going on now. And when he tosses the cards in the air, Valkyrie slices them with her sword, which remakes reality once again. And then this is where we have our new Avengers. I just want to read them here. We've got Doc Surf. So it's crazy. She slices these cards and they like reattach to different parts. So you got one card, the top of one card matching up with the bottom of another card. And when they match together, we get an amalgam of these two superheroes. So you got Doc Surf, who is the rider of the astral planes. He is a combination of Silver Surfer and Doctor Strange. Major Gamma, protector of the people, which is Captain America. And I assume Hulk-like something happened there, because there's also the Hulkoid, which is essentially the Hulk, but he's a senseless brute, they say. Then you have Scarlet Strange, Sorceress Supreme. So that's Doctor Strange and Scarlet Witch together. Sturmmeister, God of Thunder. Reaper, Spectre of Death, which is clearly the Vision, and something else. I don't know. Imperious Hex, Wizard of Atlantis. So clearly that's Scarlet Witch and Namor sliced together. Then you have, she looks like Valkyrie, and it says the first sword of Asgard. So it's Valkyrie and somebody else is put together. But anyway, you have a whole remade Avengers. Your Gadget, which is Iron Man and somebody else. And now they have to continually fight as these people. That's like the second half of this book is them, the new Avengers fighting everybody. Things get really crazy as the teams begin to fight a bunch of cartoon characters called the Unbelievables. And then after that, in comes the multiverse. Spider-Ham's involved. They're all coming at these Avengers as reality has apparently been fracturing, and they are at the center of what is a massive cosmic event that's happening right now. Finally, they discover that the main culprits behind all of this insanity are a pair of children. And I'll read to you the words of Doc Surf. The images of our other selves were drawn on Diablo's tarot with the infernal ichor of Ishizal, an occult ink of such infinite power that any manipulation of the tarot or anything in close proximity would become reality. What seemed the insane scheme of an evil manipulator was in fact random happenstance, the clutter of a toy box, organized by the imagination of children. Diabolical evil hides behind purest innocence. Looking for and finding the children who are creating this chaos, the nameless one appears. It's two-headed beast, got wings, it's crazy. Gadget talks to the children for the cards, to swap the cards for some holographic iPad, and then he reassembles the cards correctly. And almost immediately, the heroes find themselves back on the lawn of Avengers Mansion, struggling to recall what happened. Essentially, Diablo makes some cards, Valkyrie slices them up, reality fractures, Avengers fight cartoons, then the cards are put back together, everything is like it was. 4 issues for some craziness to happen here.
So the villain has a very simple idea. I'm going to take magic gook, and I'm going to make tarot cards, and I'm going to control the Avengers, and then I win. He very quickly, loses control over the situation and breaks the multiverse.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of funny.
Oh, yeah.
It's funny that the authors were like, this whole thing was by a child, because this almost feels like this was written by a child.
Earlier, you were talking about how this is definitely where you could see that somebody is using this they're playing in the Marvel universe. Well, that's what these kids were doing. It's exactly what these kids were doing. Whether they knew it or not, they didn't know, but they were, that's definitely what's going on here. It's 2 people playing in the Marvel universe. Craziness happens.
Yeah.
So
I love like I said, I love the imagination, because there's not much story to it after the first issue. It's just a lot of, and then this happened, and this happened, and these people showed up, and then it's like a giant fight. I remember as a kid, I had 1 or 2 toys from every toy line. yeah, I think we talked about this when we talked about like He-Man versus Thundercats and some of the other crossovers that we've done. We talked about like mixing toys, like could He-Man fight G.I. Joe and Transformers? And yes, or I didn't have toys to play with.
Right.
I wasn't one of the Richie Rich kids who had an entire set of Transformers. I had a Transformer and some G.I. Joes and a few He-Men. Yeah, they fought each other. And that kind of is how this book comes across, like a kid just playing with his toys. And then He-Man punched Cobra Commander. It's so much fun. And I think the other like thing about it is that they're having fun with not just the characters fighting each other, but interacting with each other. Like there was a lot of humor in the dialogue of this book without it being like a parody. And I love the idea of like almost like Sid, from Toy Story, mixing, putting a head on this thing and arms on that one, and ripping off the arms and legs of that toy and replacing it with a Erector set stuff. Like this was very clearly someone having fun with, what if we put all of these different characters in a blender and shot out different ones? What would they look like? How would they act?
Yeah.
Like Dr. Surfer, or whatever the hell he is, Dr. Surf. That's so great. Like it's just like this hippie doctor, magician on a surfboard, on a flying surfboard.
Yep.
That was a lot of fun. The Hulk as Captain America. That's a lot of fun here. I also like how when it concludes, because it starts off with like, a flashback to a mission in Germany, and then Namor's like, I'm having these, we're present day again. And Namor's like, I'm having these weird flashbacks to an event that I don't think I was actually at, or that I don't remember. Why am I having memories of an event that I don't remember? Right. And then, that resolves at the end of the book. And I just thought that was a really cool thing. Again, it's a slight book. There's not a lot to it, but I think if you're in for if you're into some pulpy entertainment, who better than Avengers Defenders Tarot?
The whole event that happens at the beginning where Captain America turns into the Hulk. Mm-hmm. If you casually know the Marvel universe and somewhat of the timeline, you know that the Hulk's not showing up in World War II Germany. That's not happening. So it's like, well, and nor is Captain America turning into the Hulk. That's the other thing. Right. You're sitting there it's neat to see as you're reading this, all of a sudden that happens. You're like, whoa, what is happening? What events occurred here? That can't be right. And of course that's a great way of putting you in the mindset with Namor, who's trying to be like, okay, this never happened. Why am I remembering it like this? I will say that, the open of this book, it's a great like foreshadowing. It's just a small panel. Mm-hmm. At the top, but there are some dead soldiers that are littering the battlefield there, or you see a bunch of cards just laying on the ground, like there are soldiers playing mm-hmm. cards, and now that's a nice little way of foreshadowing what's about to happen, what you're about to get into. Diablo, like first thing he does, he gets control of the Avengers and the Defenders, and he sends Silver Surfer out for coffee. That was hilarious. Like he's like,
that's fantastic.
And Spider-Man's like, wow, he's hanging out on the outside and he sees Silver Surfer take off. He's like, what is he doing? Going Mach 2? And he goes Mach 2 to go get Diablo coffee. Fantastic.
Mm-hmm. And then it gets back and it's cold.
Yeah, he's like, you poison this. Boy, that's something.
Yeah, it was like who wrote this? The guy that wrote The Office? Why are we doing it this way?
Heavy is the head that wears the crown too, because he was like, it's poisoned. I know it is. As you're reading the story, you're trying to figure out what's going on. Where is Alan Davis going to take you? When Doctor Strange disappears, Thor and I think Valkyrie maybe head to Asgard. They want to talk to Heimdall to see if Heimdall can actually see where Doctor Strange is at. Mm-hmm. And there's like two panels, and I thought this was an error. You see Thor, like, they're either walking across the Rainbow Bridge or whatever. Thor is walking, he's clean shaven. And in the very next panel, he's got a full beard. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what the fuck? The artist screwed up here. What is going on? And then the next panel, he has no beard. And I'm like, there is a problem here. Then I almost sent you this. I sent you this as a message. But then like two panels later, Heimdall's looking at him and he can see him in threes. He sees him as mm-hmm. the clean shaven guy, the bearded guy. And then there was another vision of whoever Thor was. So at that point, reality had started to fracture or whatever. Something had occurred to them. But anyway, I thought that was a very nice touch. I was, as the reader, I'm like, something is weird going on here, to the point where I thought it was something that they screwed up with. And that was not the case. It was actually purposeful. What else? The Wacky Racers show up, which are not the Wacky Racers. It's like, hey, we got the Wacky Racers at Home version of the Wacky Racers. It's a completely separate version, but they're the first thing you see that after reality fractures, they bust through and you see
Snidely, Whiplash, and
Yes.
Muttley.
Yes, Muttley. Yes, they crash through, and there's like, I mean, there's all sorts of cartoon craziness going on.
So when the Wacky Raceland reference was made, were you getting flashbacks to the comic that we reviewed?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
God, flashbacks to fucking Baby Darkseid. Like, oh my God, Wacky Raceland. Like, why? How did the comic book about a car race get this convoluted?
Oh, no kidding. There was at one point where the Unbelievable show up the second time. There was like there's 3 superheroes there. 2 of them, I think, had, I want to say 2 of them had baseball bats, and one of them looked like a football player. And I'm like, where did these guys come from? And then I didn't catch it until my second read through that when they started talking about this whole Ichor being in possession by the kids, or the deck, I should say. I think it was the deck of cards that was in possession of the kids. It also affected things around wherever the deck of cards was, wherever this Ichor was. So they also had baseball cards and football cards laying beside this stuff. And that's why they were pulled into the universe. It got, I mean, that stuff to me was like really interesting. I'm sitting there, I'm like, who are these guys? And then I realized, oh, it's just this thing that's where the cartoons are coming from. That's where these guys are coming from. So a neat story, a very neat story. There's a point where like words manifest on the page, but they turn into stone and crash down onto the Avengers.
It's almost like a very surrealist book.
Very.
We started this trilogy with like Marvel Cosmic, Silver Surfer Black. This is very esoteric in the Marvel Cosmic way without necessarily being Marvel Cosmic.
Right.
Like, I love the fact that they're playing with the like pagan astrological side of things, which is not really my thing. I'm not one of the weirdos. However, I like that they were taking a chance. Like, this is out there. People do it. People are into it. And they use that. But it's not something comics tend to touch on. We're either in crazy psychedelic space or, everything is like street level, Bears and Ma Nucci. Psychedelica, yes, but rarely like pagan psychedelica. I
had a good time, man. I mean, I know it was kind of out there, kind of crazy, but I still had
out there, man.
Yeah,
it's funny when we started early this year, and you were like, hey, let's read stuff off the beaten path, and both of us like, yeah, let's not do like Marvel and DC. Okay, so 3 books of Marvel, but 3 I think very distinct and interesting books. Like, this isn't the usual shit,
right?
And then, next series that we're doing, we're looking at some DC stuff. And yeah, it's books I bought at Ollie's. But I also think it's a little off the beaten path. Like, I don't think we're doing very typical stuff.
No, and it's solid.
So no one's going to listen to these podcasts either. Because we didn't do anything with Wolverine, Ghost Rider, or Punisher.
It's true. No, this Alan Davis, I think, is a pretty well-renowned writer when it comes to comics. And I think he did a fantastic job here. Definitely, when I started reading this, I was like, this has got a feel to it. And then I looked to see who did it, and I was like, oh, this is Alan Davis. This makes complete sense as to why it feels like this now. So, yeah.
Well, when you referenced Excalibur, I could see like covers in my head. He definitely rode that line between dramatic and comedic.
Very much so. All right, very good. All right, well, this concludes the trilogy, ladies and gentlemen. This is it. We got another trilogy coming around the corner, though.
All right, yeah, the next trilogy is Supergirl Power by Jeff Loeb, Luther by Brian Azzarello. We did the Joker book, now we're doing the Luther book. And then Batman Rules of Engagement by Andy Digglewiggle. W2Mnet.com is a landing page for all of our great podcasts here. Each page has the link to the player for the audio, the Spreaker show, and the link and the player for the YouTube video. Our YouTube channel is W2M Network. We have a Twitch, W2M Network. If you're just listening to traditional audio, please subscribe to the Rattledge in Broadcasting Network on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you find podcasts. Do not look for W2M. We won't be here. Only subscribe to Rattledge in Broadcasting Network. And if you really want to, subscribe to Source Material also.
Yeah, might as well do it. You're here now. You're here now. Yeah. There's no sense in not hitting the subscribe button.
But yes, definitely check out my podcast with the stunning and brave movie reviews and television reviews. Hey, Jesse comes on and does television reviews with me. We're tripsing merrily from the corner to the deuce, aren't we, Jesse?
You can bet your sweet butt that I'm sashaying in the Tremaine.
Yep.
All right. Well, hey, yeah, check out the Source Material Comics podcast. You're listening to the feed right now. Just go ahead and hit subscribe. We got all sorts of fun stuff in the archive. Mark Radulich and I have talked all sorts of comic books. You can listen to us talk about them here. You can hear me talk about the 90s centric podcast called The Unspoken Issues. Do all sorts of fun stuff on there too. But yeah, I'm ready to go to bed. That's Mark Radulich. I'm Jesse Starcher. We'll be talking to you soon. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us. All of this would not be possible without W2Mnet.com, so make sure to seek them out for more podcasts. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please feel free to share, and we look forward to entertaining you again soon.
Did they all have pockets?
Did they all have pockets? Are you talking about Rob Liefeld?
I'm making a Rob Liefeld joke.
That's what I thought. Okay. All right. I was making sure.
I scroll up like this.
Something, or who blew up the toilet?
You know, I can read comics without discussing them with you. But if I don't start scheduling some of these with Jesse, I'm never going to read any of the books that I read, that I bought. Right. Yeah, they sit on my shelf fucking like Funko Pops. Namor.
Hello, Namor. Infernal. A mystical fluid. All your fluids are mystical, isn't it, Mark?
Oh, I have so many fucking fluids.
Take a wiggle.
Are you going to get these down to the appropriate 22 minutes?
Oh, you know it.
Girls like a 22-minute podcast. It fits just right in their mouth. You know, with great gag reflexes.
Oh, they love the gag reel.
Sexual innuendo. I love it. Utane.
Adidade. Hoochie coochie mama.
We're the guardians of the flame.
Fio. There's
He's
no
like,
way.
and then he like conjures a fireball and like throws it at his son.